Welcome back. Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast. And in the studio with somebody that I've known in this journey of business for some time, man. He's added to what we love to do here at Detroit is Different. Culture, creativity, and community for a good grip now. And actually accomplished something that many cannot say they have. So many people want to open up food businesses because, I mean, especially here in Detroit. Have you peeped it? Have you peeped it? Have you peeped it? We love food here. And like a lot of things, when whatever you love turns into a business, it changes the whole way you looked at what you loved. And also, it becomes something completely different. So that could be music, that could be art, that could be writing or whatever. But with food, it's so different because so many restaurants open and so many restaurants close. And this man actually went through something many people didn't. I'm talking about COVID 19. COVID 19 was shattering to so many industries, but it's so many restaurants that we will never get the opportunity to get back to that food. Right now, people are like my favorite Mediterranean place in Hamtramck, I'm never gonna get again. And it's like, but one that stays standing right there and actually expanded in the grocery stores and so much more is Yum Village. And here today, Godwin, how you doing, my brother?
Man, my brother, it feels good to be here. I like gotta say it is so surreal watching this and then now actually being here. And
Yeah,
it's like beautiful in here. This is dope.
thank you. And it's been like a lot of people. It's so classic and cliche to tell people. It's like you should have been here. You should have been here. It's a lot of people I've met over the time, and you're definitely one of those dynamic people, and many others. But you're certainly an interview I had years ago with Motor City Match when I was doing some content for Motor City Match. Shout out to Mike Forsyth. Shout out to Roderick Miller and that team and Sidney Kemp. Those people ain't even with the DGC anymore, but even the DGC for when I was telling some of those stories when we first met. And then since then, I'm like, damn, Godwin's everywhere. I'm seeing you with the IT and the D guys. Rest in
Yeah,
peace, Dave.
yeah.
There's so much more, man. And Yum Village go from like, yo, I whip something up. We'll get in with the food, man. And then you said, okay, look, it's not just African, it's jerk chicken. And then that's when it was always beloved to me because the jerk chicken, mm, the flavor that you give to that
If it's
is
not off the
amazing.
grill, it's not real.
Ah, mm, mm,
That's
mm.
that's the key.
Okay, all right. So let's get into like first the food business part of this, man, because
Right.
you were a food superstar and food superstar that it is.
You know,
So shifting from being in somebody else's kitchen to your own kitchen, what was the I'm gonna do it?
well, the biggest thing, right? Like I used to cook for, I still do cook for celebrities. Shout out to Big Sean, shout out to Jadena and his family, shout out to Comedy Central, Travel Channel, and Food Network. I still do that. I
Hmm.
went down to Napa, California,
Hmm.
last year in January to participate in Next Gen Food Summit competition. Your boy won.
Shout out to that, man.
Yeah, so
Congratulations.
I'm still active in here, but I think the biggest step for me was just the margin and the numbers of it. Like I'm like,
Mhm.
if I'm gonna be in the restaurant industry, then I want to do everything I can to make this industry one that's worth working in, and then also have some legacy. I didn't have kids at the time, but I was like,
Yeah.
when I have kids, I want to give them the option to have something. 'Cause I went to a private school all my life, pretty much. Wayne State was my college. That was the first public school experience I ever had. So within my private school experience, just about 80% of my peers came from a situation where, they were getting something left behind to them, or they had something after graduation that was just going to be there and ready for them, whereas I didn't have that. And so
So we definitely gonna unpack that. As you know, the roots of all these Detroit is different start with those origin stories. But I
yeah,
love you added that in that perspective. And you touched on Wayne State. You went into a couple different things we gonna unpack for
right,
real, for
let's
real.
let's go.
So Detroiter. You first generation, second generation, third
Yeah.
generation.
Yep.
What are
So
you?
first generation. My mother came here by way of, I believe, New York,
Okay.
and my father came here by way of my mother.
Hilarious.
He met her in Canada while he was going to Concordia in Montreal,
Mm.
and he would drive down to Windsor for the parties, and she would go from Detroit to Windsor for the parties,
Wow.
and they ended up linking.
Ain't that something? Ain't that something?
Yeah, it was actually funny because my mom played him. She gave him the wrong number,
Ah,
and then so for like, I guess he was
he
like,
was calling the wrong international number.
right, right. So he just ran into her a year later at like another party, and
Uh-huh.
he kind of hit her with it. "Yeah, I was worried about you. I was checking on you." Blah,
Oh,
blah, blah.
wait,
So,
time out. I need to meet your dad. Nah, that's some interesting sauce. He just like sidestepped the whole getting dissed.
yeah,
So
and then,
guys, you don't have to be
don't
all
take
extra.
don't take
You
the
can you
first
can
note.
almost act like that was an error on her bad. I was concerned about you.
Yeah,
I
and
was really
so
wondering. It's great to see you again.
right, he
Okay, I
came
need to.
in
Your
with that. Yeah,
dad came in
so
with some
he
sauce.
sidestepped it,
Uh-huh.
and so she obviously that's flattering, and so she gave him the number,
Mm.
and then they started linking up from
And he was just ringing up them international
there.
because I know that we about the same age. He was calling that long distance.
Right, right. No,
Man, oh man.
when I heard the story, I was like, dang.
I know. It's like thank God he did that. You wouldn't be here.
Right, right.
So there we go. So let's go from New York. Where at in New York?
Where she's from?
Yeah.
I believe Buffalo.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we actually. So when I was born, that's where we lived. We lived in Buffalo, New York.
Mm.
My dad was working for Kodak, and then he was a software engineer at the time, and so he got recruited by the state of Michigan to come back to Michigan to work on Marvin. And
Mm.
so he came. We all came back together. I ended up coming to school here. I always joke like, RoboCop was out at the time. I'm like, we going to Detroit? What? Like,
Hilarious.
and so we go there, and he starts working downtown. I started going to Jesu Elementary, and from there, I would actually be downtown with him sometimes.
So I definitely want to get more. This is an interesting story. Okay. So your mom was from Buffalo, and when I think of Buffalo, it's like certain people think of the Bills and Wings.
Yeah,
I think of Rick James, but that's me. I guess nowadays people may think of Griselda, and
to Griselda.
also Buffalo is actually colder than Detroit.
It is.
Get way more snow than
It,
Detroit.
it's crazy out there, and it's like they got a football team, so it's decently popular of a city, I guess.
Yeah.
Manufacturing industry city.
Yeah, blue collar, blue collar.
100%.
And from there, what led her from Buffalo to Michigan the first time to Detroit?
I believe the whole family was living in Detroit. So they
Wow.
came. She was here by the time she was an adult. She was in Detroit by the time she
Okay.
was. So she
So
went to elementary school and high school here in Detroit.
okay.
She was here during the '67 riots. She was like a
Mm,
little girl back then.
mm,
My uncles on her side were in the military.
mm.
She tells me a story about how during the '67 riots, one of our uncles, rest in peace, drove a tank to their neighborhood just to check on the family.
Wow.
So it's very very interesting.
Okay. What neighborhood?
So do you know where? I guess it's like a plaza, but it's on Grand River. So that plaza down, it's like Grand River and Greenfield, is it?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that.
Well, that used to be Mammoth, but at
Oh
one
yeah,
point in
Mammoth.
time, I
Yeah,
believe it was. I think that was a Montgomery Ward. But don't push me back. I know it's some OGs listening. Like
yeah.
you know that, but yeah, Mammoth. When I was a kid, that's what
Yeah,
it
it was
was.
Mammoth, yeah, and
Yeah.
we used to go there shopping and stuff, but that was the area that we grew up in. So around
Ah.
there, and then there's like that big red church or whatever was over there, but
Mhm.
a lot of two family flat homes around there.
Mhm.
Lot of interesting community there. So like I grew up in that area, going to Jay Zoo before we ended up moving to Curtis and Outer Drive. Uh,
Okay.
when I was like 6.
So West Side the whole way through.
Right, right, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't even know what West Side and East Side was, man. Like I remember being like in 6th, 7th grade, because I was pretty sheltered for the earlier part of my life, and so like I listened to violin music. I that was it. We didn't have a lot of, like, I wasn't really exposed to a lot of the different music and stuff. So when I was in like 6th grade, 7th grade, I'll never forget. There was this whole East Side, West Side,
Mhm.
Tupac, Biggie, that was the whole thing. And so they started making it a thing where like, are you from the East Side or the West Side? I'm like, I
Mm.
live on 7 Mile. like
Yeah,
it
and it's
says
like
West
that's
7 Mile.
both. Oh, so it's like by default, I guess I'm on the west side.
Right, right,
Uh,
yeah. But now now I'm more hip. So but yeah, definitely during those times, West Side all the way, and now I guess I'm close to the East Side now.
so in that, and then also your dad's story, interesting, in Montreal for school. And how long was he in Canada and just
Yeah, yep. So
adjusting to
man,
adjusting to American life
my
in
dad was an
Detroit?
interesting cat, man. Like, so he fled. So there was a civil war in Nigeria at the time when
Hmm.
he was younger, so he fled the Biafran Civil War,
Mm.
ended up staying on a missionary with priests in Italy.
Wow.
So after he like got old enough, he became a DJ. So he's in
What
Italy.
type of music?
uh, like kind of like dance, like so pop dance music.
Hmm.
I remember going through all of his stuff when I was like 13, 14, like kind of trying to expand my musical
Hmm.
taste, and I go through all of his old crates and stuff. So he kind of went from there, like in his 20s or so. Like I think it was like in his 20s, he started really trying to pursue more of the education, and came here. Like I think between 24 and 26,
Mm.
he was in Canada.
So DJing, man, yeah, your dad sounds like a Forrest Gump like story or something is through
He,
your
he
pops,
he
man.
was doing everything. He was in the Civil War, so he was in the army at 14 or something like that, and then
Mhm.
he went over, worked in the mission as an altar boy pretty much until he was
Wow.
18, and then he started traveling Italy and Europe until he was
So
26 and stuff.
and with that, I'm guessing I'm just guessing like Igbo culture.
Yep,
Hmm. So Igbo is a culture within Nigeria.
one of the
Uh,
three main tribes. Yeah,
yeah, one of the main tribes. Yeah, there are three main tribes because boy, Nigerians will be like,
yeah. No, don't forget the Hausa, don't forget the Yoruba. But they're still like Hausa made suya, and everybody eats suya.
uh-huh.
So there's links.
Yeah, definitely. So within that, and then that journey, and then through school, and then DJing, and then into getting here to Michigan and connecting to your mom.
Mm-hmm.
So your mom's field connected to him, and he's already traveled the world so much.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess making that adjustment to coming here into America, even I'm thinking from Canadian culture, it was probably like an easier shift for him.
Somewhat. He's always a traveled person, man. So like even in our like adolescence and adulthood, like he ended up moving to Florida, and then
Mm.
he'd go to Africa like all the time. Like so he would keep it moving.
Okay. All right. And then also, like, people always have to remember, shout out to Kirk May's interview, like, travel internationally, well, travel anywhere, but especially internationally, pre 9/11 was so different
Yeah,
than post 9/11.
right. You
Pre
could
nine
just
eleven, people were almost like walk to the airport and be like, hey, I want to go to
mm,
Italy
yeah.
tomorrow. And you
Mm-hmm.
could buy a ticket, whereas I'm not saying you can't do that now, but it's a whole different get down.
TSA checks were different. Everything was just
Yeah.
significantly different.
Yep, yep. So in that, you're here going to Jesu. What was that experience like? Parochial school for you.
Well, it's funny. That's what my mom always say. I sacrificed to put you through appropriate. Yeah, so it was definitely new for me because I got to see the effects of just discipline. So like year one, year two, they used to ruler your hands still.
Mm.
And I guess something happened where they couldn't hit kids anymore in school, and
Yeah.
so then they started doing this stuff called justice under God, or like like these types of like detentions where they like have you write prayers for like 3 hours straight or something
Mm.
like that. So like these types of things were interesting experience on the discipline side, and on the education side, that private school situations, they really push the education a lot,
Mhm.
and you're just in a situation where from like 7:36 is usually when it starts to about 2:36, 3 o'clock is usually when it ends. You only get an hour dedicated towards like playing, where you could go outside or do your research. It's probably different now because I think a lot of the education programs like softened up. But like for us, like I knew calculus in 4th grade, or not. I knew multiplication and division and all that stuff by like 3rd grade, and I was like, we were attacking it at second grade. Whereas like I think they don't even touch multiplication and division until like fourth or fifth grade now. So it's just like a different pushing of the education. And then it was also interesting because that school was predominantly white
Mhm.
before I went there,
Yeah.
and then as I was going there, it was kind
It
of like,
becomes more black folks
yeah,
going.
yeah,
And it's right. So people get an understanding of Detroit for those that are watching. So inside Detroit, it's a strong Catholic culture inside Detroit. Many Catholic churches, and also at the time, but it's a University of Detroit, University of Detroit Jesuit. Down the street from UAD is Marygrove at the time, which a Catholic institution, and across the street is Jesu.
mm,
Also, University of Detroit has high schools that for young men, young women, and these parochial schools, as we've talked about in Detroit, is different before. Like even DePore's and a lot of the other schools, it's just a different approach to what is a Catholic school experience. And I think some other people would think because so much of the black influence and black students and black community culture really starts flooding in like late 80s to the 90s that
hmm
yeah, like,
yeah.
by 2000 it's like Jesu is a black school, and you're there watching this transition. What was it like witnessing this transition of so many more black students coming into the school?
So to be honest with you, and I was younger then. I never really looked at black and white stuff until high school.
Mm, mm,
Like so for me, it was just like we got white people here, we got black people here. Like I
yeah.
just thought everywhere was like that.
Hmm.
And then as I'm growing up, I'm in more primarily black spaces, and then I go to U of D and I'm back into white spaces again.
Uh,
Which is like, oh, this is just how Jesu used to be before I graduated.
yeah.
Because like around like sixth grade is really when it was like primarily more black students, but the teachers and all that stuff were still white.
Yeah.
And then now it's like primarily black teachers too. And so at U of
Mm.
D, when I went there, it was like 8% or 10% black. And like right now, I'd say it's probably like maybe 30 or 40%.
Yeah.
So
And let me say this too, and shout out to so many of those classes. Like the probability is so many of sitting judges and attorneys that went through U of D that are black, and what that I know personally, and the gateway to what opportunity is. And it's the chicken or egg theory. I don't necessarily think it's because the quote unquote schools are better, but it's just back to the intentionality of I think the parents, what they pour in, and then the whole concept of what's pushed and poured into a lot of those students. So, like a Cass Tech, a Renaissance has a different type of camaraderie in student, and UAD definitely. What was some of their classmates from high school? Because I'm sure that many of them, still you connected with, and what
you
are they
know
doing?
what? Yeah. So like in all honesty, I'm connected with just about major. I mean, I have a restaurant, so I'm in a centralized location.
Yeah.
So and I'm people can see me. They can hit me up. It's not too difficult to find me. But despite I still keep in touch with everybody. We still talk. We still talk about sports. We still talk about business. We still talk about life. We still talk about kids. So there's just a lot of connection across the spectrum, every race.
Mm.
Even like I talked to the older classmen, the younger classmen, but I was kind of like that guy as well. Like I just had a good,
Very personable.
yeah, like it didn't like even as a senior, I knew even the seventh graders by name. Like I was a captain of the football team. I was doing. I didn't really need to know any of them. Like but I just I'm a people person.
So, and let's unpack a little bit of that more so in that personality. But before we go there, what was your mom doing this time? Because I know your dad's
Yeah,
like
so
engineering and
my
things like
dad's
that.
doing engineering, and my mom's always been a social worker. So she would work
Mm,
at places like Travelers Aid Society or a neighborhood service organization, NSO. So she was always just even now, like she's like working as a client advocate, doing client services, helping fight disenfranchised. What is the new term for justice adjacent or something like that? Like, is it
mm,
a new term for combating recidivism and things like that?
yeah.
So,
So,
um,
so in that work, your mom is definitely seeing some of the toughest throes of what American society can be. What do you think? What do you think gave her the resolve to see that and move through that space, because that can be heavy.
You know what? And shout out to her because it can be heavy. She just really has always wanted to see our people in a better situation. And
Yeah.
so a lot of the folks will say like, they want to make a change, but really, the first step to that is to get to it, and like so she really looks at it as like getting on the ground level and being the person to try to salvage what a lot of people are ready to throw away, society wise.
Okay. All right. And now we're looking at culture of like violin, Catholic school, and still very extroverted. So as you're extroverted and getting so many of these friends, I'm assuming like
I'm actually an introvert,
ah.
so I'm an introvert. I went to class for all of this. I like had to learn how to be this way.
Mm,
And then even then, I didn't have friends for real until 7th grade. Like they would call my house asking to speak to Mufasa. Like I got made fun of. It,
wow.
it was like bad. And then I had only lady friends. Like I had girls, because like, I was like, I guess nice. I was in shape and stuff. But even then, they would make fun of me sometimes too because it was just fun. Like that was the thing to do, make fun of Godwin. Like
Yeah.
I would pick up a feather that I would see fall from the sky, and I was like, "Oh, feathers! Let me play with this feather, right?" And then some girl would be like, "Look at Godwin playing with that dirty feather that he picked up off the ground. He rubbing germs all over his face." And I'm like,
So so
"Okay,
just like the nuance of the cultural differences,
yeah,
because you have a African name, and people are just like, oh, this guy, you know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah."
And that and let's kids, it's just it's a reality. Kids gonna talk about other kids, and it
They
becomes
they
tougher
are.
and makes fun of, and it's tougher, especially like when you're not in the game of roasting, quote
Yeah,
unquote.
you don't know what's going on. And I got like bullied. Like if I had to go do number two, they would wait. And then they would like wait for me to get stuck. And then they would start throwing wet toilet
Wow.
paper at me while I was stuck there. So,
Wow.
I just like moved beyond that. I'll never forget, like a good friend, he passed away, but he really like pushed me to like get, interact with other people. Cause like, you like, he would always like, there's things you should do. Like, it's uncomfortable. You still got to do it, right? And so he invited me to a birthday party, and it was like eight of us, and we were playing Goldeneye. And
Hmm.
while I'm not shy, even though I'm an introvert, and
Yeah.
so I told everybody there how I felt about them and them making fun of me and all this other stuff, and they were just like, oh wow, like like we didn't know you felt this way. No one's ever,
Yeah.
and so like, I'm still friends with a lot of those people even now to this day. But I had to like, I had to be put in that situation, and I also had to have the courage at the time to speak up for myself and say what I was on my mind and how I'm feeling. And I'm still that way now. Like if someone's not flying with me, I'm gonna say something. Like it's like I don't like to talk about people if they're not present, for
Yeah.
example. So if somebody's like, like we were joking and stuff, but like if it's like malicious stuff,
Yeah.
we saying you're not saying that around me, So
Yeah.
like I'm very vocal about that type of stuff, So like I'm just feel like that's kind of what stuck with me. That's kind of what led to me being able to be friends with people, and because I never came into friendship from the aspect that I want to be your friend. I'm always more like, I'm objective. I want to learn about people. I want to interact with people, and then that friendship can come later. We can be
Mhm.
acquaintances. We can be all sorts of things up to friend. And so that's kind of where I like draw from, and so that introvertedness has become an outward extroverted thing, where I'm just understanding, I have empathy, I can really instinctually feel like I got good insight. Like I can read people, I can know what's going on,
Mhm.
and I think that has just helped me to, make friends.
So in that, like from there, and definitely seventh grade, because a lot of people in from more of a sheltered background of like not interacting with everybody in the neighborhood and what we would assume as, which there's no such thing as normal, but the more more what's the term I want to say? The the path many people go on to create who becomes friends
Mm.
and who you're connected to. You're in a different path. So with that, I'm guessing you're spending a lot of time as a child with family then.
Yeah, yep. So I had on my father's side, his sister had 8 kids,
Wow.
and then his other sister had 5 kids.
Mm.
Then on my mother's side, her sister had 5 kids. Then her other sister had 1 kid, or I think 2 kids. So like I had a lot of
A lot of
yeah,
cousins.
so I would kick it. Even my cousin went to college with me.
Are
She
you older or younger?
in the
For the most
middle,
part.
in the
Like so
middle.
so you really get a chance to like kind of experience a mix of everything by being in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. And so like it was cool, because I'm the older brother, and my family, my familial dynamic is, you're the oldest. So I got
Can you wait? Time about. You got to break this down too, because older brother in Nigerian culture is so much different than older brother in many other cultures, as I've learned. Can you give some
yeah,
of that context too?
yeah, yep. So an example, like I guess like for a middle child here, you're in the middle. You don't really you get the kind of the best of both worlds. You don't get scolded, all that stuff. And like an older child here, you might get a little bit of favoritism,
Mm.
that kind of thing. An older child from that kind of African centric theme culture, there's that pressure and the expectation that you're going to be the example for the family. You're going to do the things need to be done for the family. So, like, if there's a family crisis, it's on you. If the father's not around, or even if the father's around, it's still on you, firstborn, to do it. And like, what's crazy about that is the age doesn't matter. I could be 12. They're like, okay, you 12-year-old, you're the firstborn. You need to be on this type of stuff. Like learning, like I was getting questions about business and stuff in grade school.
Mhm.
Like you're gonna be an engineer, you're gonna be a doctor, you're gonna be doing all these things. This is the expectation. So there was just this expectation placed upon me, and then separate from that, also like death in the family and things like that. Like who's gonna take care of the estate, all that stuff. That's the firstborn. Whereas really should be more like family decision kind of
Yeah,
thing.
and I'm not saying good or bad,
Yeah.
but just from knowing one of my good friends in high school, Adenwale, shout out Adenwale, he was the oldest, and like we would be almost tripping out sometimes over like during our journey in high school. His mother and father they separated, right?
Mine did too. Yeah.
And then he would talk about so many things like, because we in like the 11th grade, we
Yeah.
hanging out, and he'd be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yo, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. I'm like, you sound like a dad. And then he started breaking down more and more of all of the responsibilities. And now it's so unique just seeing the manifestation of like so many of his brothers that are like their siblings, but they're like pseudo like children in some ways. It's interesting, which
Mhm.
I'm not saying is right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I just know culturally, and that was him
When you see
and
like
other people
someone
I've seen.
who's
Yeah.
like between 20 or 30 that has a nice job, can do all this fantastic shit, but then like the common sense, or like there's a certain skills level of life things
Mhm.
that's missing, like that can happen. Like I know what you're saying.
Yeah, because we'd be like, "Yo, you coming to the party?" And it's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be there, but I'll be there for like an hour." And then it's like, "Well, who you want to be there ain't even gonna be there." And it's like, just stuff like that. I've learned more about that over time and that connection, and then just especially the son dynamic, the oldest son. Especially the firstborn that's a son, but even if the firstborn is a daughter, but I know just the son carries a
Yeah, like
different.
little that's still a little left over that like
And
patriarchy in there.
yeah, how did you balance and manage that as a kid?
You know, for me, I think I was very fortunate in like being bullied a lot,
Mm.
because it really took me to like, like they say like you gotta go low and stuff. Like I was like depressed. I was like suicidal. I was like in
Mm.
a very tough place
Mm.
growing up, and so when I came out on the other side, it was like I'm really just gonna like be. impactful. Like I want to be purposeful. I want to be impactful. And in order for me to be able to do that, I need to be mentally sound, you know? So like when stuff is like like I kind of like don't like I feel pressure, but I don't feel pressure
Yeah.
because you know I objectively look at pressure. I don't think it's a bad thing, you know. Like I think sometimes because of the convenience of life and just the what the internet has done for us, it becomes almost difficult to fathom a step, you know, like in order to work out, you know, you gotta feel a little, you know, you gotta get sore, you know, you got in order to like lose weight, you know, you gotta objectively do the things that, you know, are gonna get you to lose weight. You know, like you can't in order to make money, right? You know, you either you're gonna get a windfall or you gotta do the things, you know, to get that money, right? And so like I just feel like there's just pressure and pressure isn't a bad thing, you know.
It's interesting because we spoke a little bit pregame, like before we record discussion about this, and I was sharing like sometimes the pressure I feel like, oh man, it could be a step away, but also I'm big in different philosophies, an Eastern philosophy of yin and yang, where in crises comes opportunity. It's just can you see the opportunity, and hence I always say like try not to marry myself to one path because
Mhm.
if that path and it's so much discernment because sometimes you got to keep walking that path to get through the fire, but sometimes you got to pull off that path and pivot immediately. And so much of this discernment I believe is so based in belief, um and confidence, intentionality, and really knowing where that opportunity lies. And so I feel you on that, and it can be a journey.
It is. And you know, the thing about journeys is you have to have a destination, right? You know, and that's I think the diff. A lot of people who go on a journey with no destination become drifters.
Yeah,
You know, that's what a ship does without a navigation point. It's just drifting in the sea.
and that's the term I was using. It's so many brothers that I see that are adrift. It's people, but especially brothers, because back to when I think of the design of America itself, as we were talking even
Hmm.
pregame about like some of the things where the trade is different can go, but the design of America itself, this is excuse my America's some gangster shit. You know, this is stolen land,
Look,
it's stolen labor, it's a stolen loan. So like, and the design of black men being here,
mhm,
and was definitely at one point in time the brute force for enslavement, and then afterwards to be inside of factories. And right now, that same work is a lot transition into being incarcerated. So if you're a black man without one of those paths, it's so easy to end up adrift because, especially in a place like Detroit, Michigan, those opportunities that people just can kind of lay in the lap for you are not as abundant. And I'm not saying everybody's journey needs to be to, I don't know, become Jeff Bezos,
yeah,
but your journey does need some type of purpose within, I agree, within that destination. And having that purpose, I believe, the
you know,
gives
so
definition and starts walking that path.
here's the thing. So for young, like if you saw, like I do a lot of mastermind alliance stuff. You're like
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
manifest, and so like what people like you have to practice it. You have to work
And
it out.
I want you to break down what that is before you break down kind of where you get into in both.
Yeah. So I'll break down the power of manifestation first. All right. So it's not enough that I say I want to be rich, right? It's not enough that I write down my goals every year, which you know when you write things down, there's a process that happens in which you are committing to yourself, you're committing to the universe that you really want this thing to happen. But you've got to be as specific as possible. I can't just say I want a woman. You know, we'll keep it simple. I want a woman, right? I can't just say I want a woman and then expect a woman to appear because the mind is so powerful. A woman might appear, and it might be the wrong woman who is not financially sound, who's wants to party and smoke all the time. Might be a bad influence of a woman, right? And so you have to really say, I want to be the next Anthony Bourdain of color operating a scalable Afro Caribbean food brand that is connected to food adjacent activities such as, blah blah blah, right? These are the things. And so when people say you got to manifest, and when people read the stuff like The Secret and all of that stuff, you still have to practice. And so how you practice is something so simple as I think one of the exercises in the old school, like the OG says, you take a ship, right? Have you heard this before?
Mm.
So the way it works is every week, you got to do this every week and then test it out and make sure you can do it the same way. You would do a visual, like in your head, not writing anything down, a visual construction of a ship. It could be any size, but you just have to be able to visually construct that ship, then write down all of the things that are going to be on this ship.
That's
right?
deep.
All right. And so what that does is it gets your mind, it's like exercise, right? It gets your mind into the process of creating these things and then being able to then see these things transcribed into reality. And so now you replace this ship with your business, and you're not just thinking of the business, you think of every single nail and board and wheel that goes into the construction of this business, much like that ship. And that's when you get the actual thing that you want. And so for Yum Village, I created the alternative branding. I created the clothing. I did all of the things that I want to do for Yum Village. And then I started with just chicken and rice.
Wow, so much to unpack in there, and you took us like you you folded the timeline dimension into where we gonna go. But I want to add some sauce to what you just shared from this angle, man. So this this year I started focusing on a whole lot more on meditations in that same realm of what you're saying. So I center myself and I think of a color. And it helps, like, breathe in things and then breathe out like the nonsense of whatever, I got this email or this person or whatever, you know what I'm saying? This joke. Then I get to a color. Then I walk into a path. Then when I get in my path, I center around, like I usually call it, like I got a hell of an angel team. The spirits that are always aligned and walking with me. So whether that be my mother, my granny, my grandfather, many others. So it's interesting you think of that, because to get there, it's a room that is so constructed that I can draw it visually to a T. And where it's at, when it's at, like I'm there and I've centered and I've walked in there. Like, and I see that room almost every time I meditate, because that's the next step of the centering when I'm interacting with the different people. So it's interesting you say that, and I'm not aligning both into like making a shift, but it's back to that critical thinking process of centering on a thought. And back to that centering on a thought, because I do believe it's so much noise in the mind of many people. And this device right here has been so key at adding so much noise to people's minds.
It's
So
crazy.
you kind of think to yourself, it's like, do you have focus? Some of the people I work with, it's like where your focus is, and what that focus can't be. And then it's like, I need your critical thinking skills correct.
Right.
But it's before critical thinking. It's like, is your mind clear enough? Are you centered?
Right.
To whatever it may be. So when you talk about building that ship, and then you couple that with the manifestation, because I'm one that definitely believes in so many things we speak into existence, hence spelling.
Right.
Your spell, like a spell, you're spelling a word, it's a spell, and we're speaking verbally. We speak things into existence.
There's definitely sorcery in language. There's sorcery in what we scribe, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna put a little word vomit out here, so forgive me, right? So we opened 11 months before the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
April 2019. The pandemic came in March of 2020.
Yeah.
By May of 2020, the restaurant industry saw a 40% decrease in sales. In the first year of the pandemic, there was a $240 billion reported loss, and 2.5 million people left the industry within the first 3 months. So
Yeah.
from March, April, May,
Yeah.
right? It was a very, very difficult time. But because of, belief systems, because of manifestation, because I also wasn't flying blind, I had some aspect of navigation there. I was able to pivot, transition, and still remain viable. But it's funny you say these phones, man. We're the same age pretty much, right? Like
Mhm.
I turned 40 um on October 3rd. So
Man, congratulations. I'm
uh,
41, man. And let me tell you, being 40 for people that ain't 40, it's amazing.
it
But
is the
to
shit.
me, it's only the shit if you're 40 and you have purpose. For
Right.
the people I know that don't have purpose at 40, if you live in, I mean, the great example is television when we was kids. But like,
Yeah.
if you're Al Bundy and you still living on highlights of your life, 40 is shitty. But probably 39 was pretty shitty too.
Yeah, look, 30, 35 was
Yeah,
like
if you don't have purpose, it's going because the purpose that others will give you, even if you love them, even if it's close, it's nothing like having your own
it's
purpose.
not. And one thing, hit the gym. Just hit the gym. 25 to do 2 miles a day. I'm trying to do 10 a week. It
That's
helps.
what's up.
It helps. It helps.
Yeah,
It really does help, man.
yeah.
So in 2008, I believe, was the last year before a camera phone, right? So in
Mm.
2008, over 50% of the United States population did not have a camera phone. By 2012, over 50% of the United States population had a camera phone. And when did Instagram come out?
Man, I was like one of the first to it because I was like, okay, this the next app in my mind. I already said the next app. I'm hopping on it early. Maybe was that I can tell you when. It was whatever year RG3 was drafted because I was in DC.
Check.
I was in DC when RG3 got drafted, talking to some people at an Ethiopian restaurant saying, like, yo, I think y'all gonna be good. So whatever year RG3 got drafted is the year Instagram came out. Cause I was like I may have got Instagram like 2 months into it becoming an app.
Okay. So Instagram came out in 2010. All right. So
Mhm.
2012, 50% of the people have camera phones. Instagram came out in 2010. That was the first publicly accessible application that required you to have a front facing camera
Yeah.
in order to use it, right? If you look at, I don't have them in front of me, but if you look at the um, numbers for children and adults posting and are registering as being depressed or having some type of mental
Wow.
issue, that literally doubles
Mm.
by 20% year over year
Mm.
after this comes out, right? So these things are definitely a double-edged sword because it's one of the most.
Like everything in life is crisis and opportunity.
Mhm.
So it's like one of those things and how you look at it. It's completely that. So it can be the best gateway, and even me, like I'm gonna present my victory more than I'm gonna present my loss. But it's even through like presenting your loss and your trauma, audience for that too. So like I think it's depending upon how you look at the device. If you see it as a tool, and I'm gonna go, it's the same thing about money. Money is a tool. It's a
100%.
resource to be
100%.
used, but it's not supposed to be. Uh, it's not supposed to be adorned like a god. This isn't supposed to be adorned like a god. Our look isn't supposed to be adorned like a god. Hence, having that purpose gives me so much more to fill up my cup to move through everything I do. Because Lord knows, as I always use this term, the propensity of crazy to kind of do some of the things I'm doing, meaning the insanity based on what society would see what I'm doing in community, people would say, like, this is crazy. But it's back to like, okay, I'm gonna fill this cup up because I see the purpose of what I'm doing between community, creativity, and culture with this. And hence that's where like the connection to you has always been like, okay, this dude's different because you're seeing different angles. And now that you break down your thought process because it's so intentional, I want you to expand a little bit about that person, like you say. I want a woman or I want some money, not seeing the full scope.
Yeah.
When did you start crystallizing more of your vision? Because yes, I also wouldn't subscribe. Like the secret isn't as basic as, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
I want this, but when did you start crystallizing your visions to manifest them?
Right, right. Because the thing about vision is everybody can have it, but not everybody can have it, right?
Yeah.
So I like really started to drill down my vision. I guess it was like after so I'm not this type of person anymore, and you guys are gonna get a little bit of the personal. So I used to be wild. I was a partier. I used to do drugs. Like I was doing everything, and so I was a district manager at Target at the time,
Mm.
and I was young, and like it would be crazy because I would go somewhere. And I would just I want a parking spot, and a parking spot would just like somebody would
Present
pull out, yeah,
itself.
and so and no matter like when I would just want things, like it would happen, and so I started wanting like a more exciting life. I wanted to be getting invited to the parties. I wanted to
Yeah.
be on the scene, and like that happened. Like I
Mm.
started getting like was going by man about town. I was the man about
Yeah.
town. I was around. I was out, but I started getting involved in things I shouldn't be getting involved in. I started doing cocaine, for example,
Mm.
stuff like that. And I'll never forget, one of my shout out to one of my boss at the time. He was my district lead, and I'm, like I said, I'm pretty straight up. So I
Yeah.
told him everything I was going through.
Yeah.
He was like, I think I was 26 at the time. He was like,
Mm.
"No, man, you're 26. Like your time for doing all these types of things is over. Like you're about to be 30.
Mm.
Like you really got to start thinking about what you want at
Mm.
30, because at 30 you're not going to be able to do this,
Mm.
and then if you try to do this at 30, then you're 40. Like when you turn
It's
40,
back to like what I say. It's like if you don't have that purpose at 40, life is gonna be shitty.
yeah, yeah, because he was in his 40s, and you know what? I'm very fortunate to have a lot of 40-year-olds in my life when I was in my 20s, because
Mm.
they all were like, "Yo, you got to do this." Like they were like, "You got to do this. You got to do this." One of my guys, Ryan Torreson, he was 30 when
Mhm.
I started working for him. So he's
Mm.
probably like 50 something now. He's like over
Yeah.
50, right? And so he would tell me every day. He was like, "Look, man, like even with the game, he's like, if you want to have a career, like right now you're about to be 30, you don't have $50,000 in your bank account, you're kind of behind, like these." So he would really be putting this type of stuff into me, like like all of these cats would be telling me, like, like I didn't really have many black mentors until I got to like 30 plus, but like
Yeah.
in my 20s, it would be these like older white cats who I happened to be working for, and I was a hard worker. Like within my first year working for this man, within my first 6 months being there, I saved the company $277,000.
That's
That's
amazing.
that's what's reported, right? And I just got a $5,000 raise and a title increase, right? So he like saw that and it was like, I think
Mhm.
he just poured in, because I was working like 50 plus hours a week
Mm.
on a $28,000 salary out of college,
Mm.
because we graduated during the recession. Like
Yeah.
40-year-olds were going for jobs I was going for back
Yeah.
then. So and then in 2008, it's like a whole crazy thing. 2008, 2009. So just getting a lot of this advice on what to do, as well as just getting these life experiences of just things that would happen. I would get a girl in my life, and it wouldn't be a good girl,
Mm.
but I would get one. Like I would never not have a girl. And so like these types of things even too. Like I was like, let me just not have a
Manifest.
girl. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Let me like
Focus.
right, right.
So in the mix of this, where does food come into play?
Right. So, I would always do potlucks and things like that. Like when I was a district manager at Target, whenever I would make food for any of the parties or the potlucks or things like that, people would always, they would love it. They would be like, "Oh, this
Mm.
is this is really good, blah 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 blah." And so, and I had a lady at the time too, who I would make the food for, and they were very very um, positive about what the food tasted like, but they were very adamant about me not having. This is where reality, like, because you can dream, like it's very important to dream, but you also have to have dreams rooted in reality. And so, I think that my dreams weren't necessarily rooted all the way. Just in hindsight, thinking
Mhm.
about it now.
But but what we're saying is crystallizing the vision.
Exactly, right?
To crystallize the vision, it becomes more reality.
Hmm.
And I'll explain more of my thought process. I think I was talking on like I see life, and we all see different things and visions. How I hit you, I see
Yeah,
life as always an equation.
right. Yeah.
So I see it as like usually I have, and everything has variability, but I think anything above 50% is a constant. Anything below I look at as a variable. So I always see like a equal sign in the middle, X times 15%
Hmm.
on one side plus X one. Then I see X times 85% on the other side plus X2. And then as I define whatever those things are, and then I'll add different things. I'm dividing, I'm adding, I'm subtracting, I'm multiplying, like to get it to be 1 to 1.
Yeah.
So that's how I crystallize my thought process. And I had to explain that to somebody where it's like I always see life as an equation. And then I'm looking at it, it's like, okay, how much variability is this? And
Uh-huh.
hence taking the risk is a part of the life experience. So I don't want everything to be so certain, because I don't think life would be worth living if I just knew what was going to happen on the next page. It's like watching the same movie every day.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
the process.
Look, I mean, there's 1,440 minutes in the day. 15 minutes is 1% of your day, right?
Yeah.
So you break it down, like, what percentage are you putting towards what you're trying to accomplish? For real, for real.
Yeah.
And so, like, ended up going to work at Quicken Loans from Target.
Yeah.
And while I was at Quicken Loans, before Bizdem and before all this stuff, Quicken Loans had this thing called Mousetrap. It was where you submit different ideas. And
Mm.
so, as I was working as a mortgage banker, I took all the money I was making mortgage banking. I was doing 6 figures a year. I paid a software developer to develop what's called a MySQL database at the time. It was like a
A
background
sequel.
database.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For people that know SQL servers, my dad is. He designs systems and stuff like
Okay. Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. So
So wait, let me explain some of that from my
yeah,
dad.
please,
So
please
a
do.
SQL server is basically okay, you know how you got that Microsoft suite on your computer back in the day and you acted like you knew what Excel was, but along with Excel came PowerPoint. You probably know what that is because of your presentations that you do. You definitely know, you should know what Word is, right? And then it was this thing called Access. Access is a database system. A database definitely keeps different data stored so you can climb through it. If a person really knew Access, you probably, like, I mean, I'm talking about like 95. If you knew Access, you had a gateway to being a good key to a lot of organizations needing to anchor you. SQL is a server that can process things that are outside of just Access itself into multiple systems, so you can pull different data points and different information for everything. So that's like a quick Kari Frazier from Greg Frazier CPA example of what a SQL server
and
would be.
and quite an excellent explanation, if I might add. And
Thank you.
so, the original iteration of Yum Village was we were an Airbnb for
Mm,
restaurant spaces,
wow.
and so we would connect would-be food entrepreneurs with low use or underutilized spaces in order for them to set up short-term leases to do pop-ups.
Yeah.
And so we were doing this back in 2012 before
Yeah.
pop-ups were even a thing like they were now.
Hmm.
You really got to pioneer. You got to be cutting edge, because if you're not, then you're on the back end. So I'm always trying to be cutting edge. So we put this idea in place to do an Airbnb for restaurants. And then on the back end, we also tried to attach an Eventbrite to it. So we would have them do their pop up, and then we would also sell tickets for the pop ups as
Yeah.
well.
I don't know if you remember this, but like this is early on, like we crossed paths in this.
Were
Like,
you with?
I don't know if you remember this. This may have been like 2013 when no, 2014. So in 2014, back when, like, this is so back in the day. And shout out Simeon and Handsome Sam. But Handsome
Okay.
Sam, that was at the time working at Cliff Bell's, did something. He was like, we did something together with Marcus Elliott. Shout out Marcus Elliott. These are like all people now that are like doing different things. So when I share some of my Detroit is different stories, and I'm gonna share more of my personal stories soon with a new show. But so I did a show through my man Freddie Freddie was choosing, was like, "Oh, Kari, you need to rap and do something with Handsome Sam." So he introduced me to Handsome Sam. He like, "I got these players coming down here. I got Marcus Elliott, Alex White, all the young guys that couldn't get on the main stage of Cliff Bell's at the time, and they're doing something." Ian Finkelstein, shout out Ian or Fink as they would say, and Alex at the time, right now too. So they're like, "Let's do an event." It went well. And I was like rapping at Cliff Bell's, which was like unprecedented at the time. And I still look at it like, I don't know even now about that. But then from there, we did something at the Jam Handy. I did this.
Oh
I did
yeah.
something at the Jam Handy with years ago with the Michigan Citizen when I was working there, where it was like kind of like a playoff of
Detroit soup.
like the pancakes and politics they had, but they did like grits and fish and everything. And I
Mhm.
was like, "Yo, I love this space." I meet Simeon. I'm like, "Yo, can me and Handsome Sam do something here?" They was like, "Yeah, you can do this." And then we needed a play, and I was like, "Yo, we need food if people gonna come here this close to like around like Thanksgiving." And he was like, "Yo, I got a guy. I know a guy," and I didn't even know who y'all was, but they came in with like crews worth of crock pots, and it was like these players from Spain that came and they sat in with us, and I'm rapping at that, and I'm like, "What is this?" And they was like, "Yo, it's this pop up thing that my man got," and it was like some African stew and like rice,
Yeah.
all coming out of like this crock pot. And I don't even know if you remember this, but it
You
was
were-
like around Thanksgiving, and I
I
told
remember
Alex, I'm
that.
like, "Yo,
Yeah.
this is so dope. We gonna run it back."
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. That's
Yeah. So
beautiful.
that was like one of those shows where it was very intimate. Simeon was early on at a Jam Handy vibe,
Mhm.
setting the flow. This was back when Detroit Soup would happen there, and that's kind of how people knew the
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I recall 100%. And so we really like that was really the instance of it. It's like Yum Village is a pop up space. Yum Village is a tech company,
Hmm.
and then during that process, we would do dinner. So like at our peak, we were doing somewhere around 2 to 3 dinners a month, and
Hmm.
each of those dinners would have anywhere from 80 to 150 people coming to these dinners. Paying 50 to 60 bucks.
We had about 50 freeloaders at ours. I'm just
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah. But so we do these dinners, right? And we have live music, live
yeah.
entertainment. But one of the things we also did was we did surveys. We did surveys with each of these dinners, based off of how much would you pay for this, multiple choice, so that we could just aggregate the data real quick. And so we'd say
Hmm.
like, how much would you pay for this? What do you think of the presentation? All of these different
Yeah.
things. And so I think we had over 5,000
Wow.
responses.
Providing more data to make decisions in the market.
Right? And so the biggest thing was we want African, like they want ethnic food, but not just any ethnic food. They want African based ethnic food.
And you was thinking to yourself, "Damn, I can."
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like,
so like after I
the
see
streets
this,
is calling me.
right. And so what a lot of people don't know is when we were doing those dinners, I did a 50-50 split. So
Hmm.
like we would say, like say we got 85 people come to the dinner and they all pay 50 bucks. I would keep half, and then I would give half to the chef team that I was working with.
Yeah.
So like I'm giving chefs opportunities to make bank for them and their people.
Yeah.
That they're not like they're making their week's salary or times two in a night with me.
Hmm.
And then I'm on the other side, I'm taking care of like the venue and doing all this other stuff. But
Yeah.
much like stuff in Detroit, as it started getting big and stuff, then the venues started wanting more money.
The game changes all the time as
Yeah.
the game changes. But
Right.
but all of these lessons help you crystallize your vision, because it's
Right.
like, oh, that's something that I gotta take. Hence, now you understand my equation stuff. Okay, this becomes that constant just became a variable.
Right.
That went from 75% to 30%
Right.
that fast.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? You call that same venue because you made the venue hot. Now you can't use that venue no more. You got to go to someplace else. That place don't know you, and that place is looking at it like, "Hey, you was just these people that is in the front of the newspaper in the news. So I want $45,000," and you be like, "God damn."
Yeah. And so that was the thing, right? Like the game changed a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And then I started looking at it as, well, I can cook too.
Yeah.
And I don't be like I can cook better than some people, but
But it's back to like, now let's turn this variable, meaning the chefs,
Mhm.
into a constant, which is me.
Right.
There you
Because
go.
we got the venues, charging a little more. So it was a lot of these things, like I'd be like I would look at the numbers, like even the food truck stuff, right? So when we did the food truck, I partnered with somebody to do that.
Yeah,
And I also helped organize. I created all the flyers every weekend for that beer garden. I coordinated
I
and,
remember.
and facilitated
I
all of
remember.
the
It was a cool
entertainment.
spot. It was a
Yeah.
cool. It was a cool spot. We were thinking about that was when because Handsome Sam got us down there, and I was like, I don't know where we at now because back to like it became more of a variable for me. Like Marcus Elliott and all them dudes like went from like where they was like young cubs in the game, where now they active. It's like
Mhm.
they can take the stage themselves. They don't need me no more.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
I'm kind of let me get out the way and let them do their thing, and I'm doing Detroit is different.
Man, I'm telling you, man. So the numbers they were doing from 4 p.m. to like we'd be out of there by 11.
Yeah,
Friday, Saturday,
you was
Sundays.
kicking ass, bro.
35 to 50K would be what the alcohol sales were.
You were kicking ass.
But I wasn't getting none of those alcohol
And that's
sales.
back to like understanding all the variables in the equation.
Hmm.
So I want to say this because this is hot. We gonna have to have a part two because now I want you to get to. We gonna pick back up with this story. You brought something in here with us. You going someplace, and I'm gonna be rocking this too. So when you see me in some fly gear, show the people what you got.
Look, 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 look. So we do clothing too. So this is part of the stuff. So during the pandemic, we started to do like this is food adjacent. So part of our mission, the original mission at Yum Village, is to open up the dialect
Mhm.
of the African diaspora. This is what happens. And so this is like an example of some of the stuff that we make at Yum Village right from our clothing store, and you can kind of see the craftsmanship here and stuff. So this is like a nice windbreaker. These
Yeah,
are like African
and I'm gonna
forward
be rocking
designs.
some
Yeah.
very soon. I'm gonna be rocking some very soon. It's so much more. You got like he brought like a feast worth of food. You're in grocery stores now.
Yeah, we're in
It's so
grocery
much more.
stores. Yeah.
Trying some new things. And then I got another idea for you, but we gonna talk off camera about
Yeah.
that. But now we gonna do classic Detroit is different questions.
All right,
But
hit
if
me
you
up.
don't know, go to Yum Village right there at Woodward. You should know where it's at, but you can give them the address.
6500 Woodward, Detroit, Michigan, across from the train station. If it's not real, it's not off the grill. All right. It's always off the grill because Young Village is the realest.
Okay, all right. So with that, very first car, year, make, and model, year you got it.
Yeah. So I got it in 2012, I believe.
Mm,
No, I'm sorry. I take that back. That's 2006. I got it during when the Super Bowl was here.
okay.
It was a candy red uh, 2002 Dodge Intrepid with
Okay.
leather interior. It
Whoa.
had the 6 CD changer.
That was you was
And the MP3, I had
oh
the red
man,
rims on that boy
you
too,
was
man.
I'm sure a lot of Ludacris was being played in that ride.
Act the fool. Yeah, no, I'll be going to Canada. I would stay in Canada. Like as soon as I turned 19, I was almost exclusively in Canada.
You picked up from your pops.
Well,
I'm
that
just
too,
messing with you.
and like it was weird. Like so, I date like well at the time like I'm wifed up now, but I dated a lot of different races when I was
Mhm.
coming up and stuff. And in Canada, I just found that it was a lot more fluid. Like in
Yeah.
Detroit, like they don't do this now, but in Detroit, like some of the white girls would be like, "I don't do black guys." Like they would say that to you. Like
Yeah.
can't imagine that being said today, but like
Hey,
but behind closed doors, they probably.
yeah.
But like that was the thing. So like when I go over in Canada, there's just a lot more race, a lot more culture, and a lot more open. Like in America, is like a
Mhm.
melting pot. We just assimilate here. In other countries, it's more like a mosaic. Like it's still a big picture, but your individual, unique differences are acknowledged in the grand scheme of things.
Okay. And you're DJing at the end of the fireworks. You get to play one song. What you playing?
I'm gonna play. Um, Damn, that's a good one. I'm gonna play one more time.
By who?
I'm gonna play. Actually, no. I'm gonna play Bob St. Clair. World, hold on.
Okay. And last question. You could rename Woodward after one Detroiter. Who would it be and why?
Oh, damn, for real? I would probably name it after you said the whole of Woodward,
Yep.
even into Grosse Point.
Yep.
I would name it after Kwame,
Okay.
Kilpatrick, so that we could keep the dialogue going because he's done some egregious things, but there's a lot of other people who've done quite more than he has done, and they didn't get the same scrutiny or pain points associated with his name. And I do, even though Kwame did his stuff, man, like he still came back despite all of that, and that is very, very difficult to do as a man of color to still have a house, have a name, like be able to still do all of these things, even when you went to jail. You
That's
know.
deep. Thank you so much. We're going to have a part 2 sooner than later.
Hey, thank you, boss.
Peace.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.